Okay. Hi, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I've got myself, Sadia, and I have Sophie with me today. Hi, Sophie. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for putting on this webinar about Pakistan.
Pleasure, and thank you so much for accepting and joining me. We could spend the whole evening saying thank yous to one another. So, what I want to let you, obviously, the audience, those of you who are and watching us, is say, firstly, thank you so much for taking the time out. Secondly, this isn't a classroom. Relaxed conversation that Sophie and I are having. And if you have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to use the chat box. And I'll keep an eye on the chat, Sophie. So if there's anything I can, don't feel you've got to wait till the end of the presentation. And when I say presentation, it's not a formal presentation. So we're not going to bore you, death by PowerPoint slides. We have got some slides just as more prompts to kind of let me know the flow. But to let you know what we're going to do over the next hour, so in fact, it would probably help if I just kind of put on the video, which has the agenda, so what today's session is not about is going through any specific tour itineraries or any specific tours. Today's session is really to have a conversation with Sophie and tell you why the press are all talking about Pakistan, but also highlight some of the stuff that the press perhaps aren't talking about and aren't showcasing. But what we want to do is give you a top-line introduction about Pakistan, about us, what we do, and then really use this as an hour of learning and educating. So I'm going to kick off with myself. I'm Sadia Barber. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the CEO and founder of Experience Pakistan. For me, Experience Pakistan is very much a passion project. This is not a commercial business project. I always say to all my prospective clients that I'm actually not selling a holiday to Pakistan. What I'm doing is I'm inviting you into my country to show you Pakistan through my eyes. I also laugh and say, if Pakistan didn't exist, I would be in the travel industry. I'm only in the travel industry because of Pakistan. The project started back in 2018, and it was very much about putting Pakistan in people's radar to change their perceptions and misconceptions they have of Pakistan, and also to try and remove some of the ignorance or prejudices they may have either about my country or about my community. And I thought the best way to do that is if I can take as many people to Pakistan and show it to through my eyes, that's what I can do. For me also, it's about how can I help the local communities, particularly the women and the youth in Pakistan sitting overseas here in the UK, and travel is a really good way to do that. So that's quite a long intro, but I'm going to go on to Sophie now. So sorry, bear with me a second. It's
Sadia and I are very much on the same page about the importance of tourism as a tool for making people look at destinations, recognise why they're important, to contribute to economic development, to cultural development, and really to intercultural exchange. I first fell in love with Pakistan more than 20 years ago. And in fact, before I even visited the country, because when I was an undergraduate student, I studied Hindi and Urdu, and I studied the poetry of Pakistan, I studied the history of Pakistan, and I knew right from that time when I was 18, 19 years old, that this was a country that I really wanted to see and to spend time in learning about and meeting people. And I've been very fortunate to have been able to travel quite widely within Pakistan, both in the north and most recently in the south. My company, Maximum Exposure, really works a lot with tourism destinations like Pakistan, which are not on the mainstream radar. And I quite like it that way because it means that I get to go and see things without the crowds, to have a very authentic cultural experience, but also to be part of the country's tourism journey as it grows, and hopefully doing it in the most sustainable and responsible way.
Thank you, Sophie. And it's interesting you say that, you like the fact that there aren't many tourists. And I think that when people say to me, what's the one selling point of Pakistan? And also, there's many, but I think the number one is the fact that actually, because tourism or international tourism is so underdeveloped, that when you go, you will probably be the only foreigner or the only person there. And because of that, Pakistan has got a lot of its authenticity, and it's not a commercialized destination.
Absolutely. You don't go on holiday to be surrounded by other British people. If you want to be surrounded by British people, you have a domestic trip within the UK. When you go to Pakistan, you want to meet Pakistanis, not other tourists. And that's one of the great things about the country, is you can still do that. You're not going to go into a museum or to a historical site and be surrounded by busloads of other international tourists. If there are other tourists around you, they will be domestic tourists, people seeing their own country. And that's a wonderful experience and a wonderful way to see the country.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, as I was worried about, so bear with me a second, because I'm not a techie here. So I have got this on a roll, and I'm wondering why it hasn't kind of gone on to the next slide. So, there it is. Okay, so as I mentioned to you, I have got a quick agenda here, but it's not. So Sophie and I are going to talk about, or briefly cover, what are the press saying, what the press aren't saying, what type of holidays you can enjoy in Pakistan. So I'll give you a top line overview. When is the best time to go? And I think Sophie and I are going to be talking a lot, because I think that's connected. I mean, it seems like I've known Sophie for ages or for years, but actually I think, last year, and we were introduced through mutual friends, and it was when I think it was our and the positive impact tourism can have on breaking barriers. And I think that's where we really connected, because we were both on the same wavelength. We could see how much tourism can play a role in that. So I think, in between we'll be talking about that. And then, so this is really close to me, because we are going to talk about Sophie's experience in Pakistan. So Sophie, she's mentioned she's been a couple of times. Most recently was last year in November. Is that correct, Sophie?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And then she was kind enough, I said to her, or I said to Sophie, well, since going to Pakistan, why don't you pay a visit to my hometown, Peshawar, which is obviously a city I'm very passionate about, and I'm forever advocating that one should go there, despite what the FDO may say about my city. And, I'm delighted to say that I've got 6 clients actually in Peshawar as we speak, I think in Food Street, having dinner and having a great time. And so I was delighted that Sophie took me up on the offer and visited Peshawar. So I'll be keen, and I'll be touching with you, Sophie, of how you find Peshawar.
It was one of the highlights of my trip, so I'm very keen to be talking about that later on in the session.
Fantastic, brilliant. And of course, I'm obviously a native of Pakistan, but I think Sophie will have an interesting perspective. So at the end, Sophie will be going through any opinions or her basic opinion of why you should visit Pakistan, and any hints and tips from a foreigner's perspective. So what are the press saying? So as I said, until recently, Pakistan was very much an undiscovered jewel in Asia. And Imran Khan, in fact, I think called Pakistan, or described it as the jewel of Asia, in one of his kind of speeches in 2018. But which is why in 2018, as I set up Experience Pakistan, because I wanted to show people the country through my eyes. I have lived in the UK, but I have also lived in Pakistan. In fact, I went to college in Pakistan. Even living here in the UK, we would go back and forth to Pakistan pretty much every year to go to a wedding or visit relatives. In the summer months, we got up north to escape the heat. So I was already aware of, how beautiful Pakistan was. But I think when I lived there and saw the culture and saw it from a different perspective, I think that's where my passion was created of I really want to do something. But not just that, I was frustrated that why aren't people talking about Pakistan? Why is it not getting the recognition it deserves? And Pakistan, unfortunately, is a poor country, and our tourism board, as Sophie knows, because she had a meeting with them, isn't quite as developed as perhaps some other countries where we don't have the budget for marketing spend to be able to do big billboard campaigns or big TV campaigns. And given my background in marketing, it was very much rolled up my sleeves. My dad's taught me, if you don't like something, or if something's not happening, don't complain, do something about it. Which is why I thought, right, okay, well, no one's marketing Pakistan, I'm going to champion and promote Pakistan, but promote it in a very authentic and community-based way, so that you're seeing Pakistan as a local rather than from a distant. That's really important. I think, Sophie, you'll agree with me. I think part of the real tourism is really when you enable your clients or people to really immerse themselves into the culture and really engage with the locals, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Tourism has to be an immersive experience. If all you were going to do is look at it, you may as well sit at home and watch a film. The whole point of being in a country is not only be able to see the things around you, but being able to talk to people, being able to eat the foods, listen to the call of the muezzin or people singing in the shrines, have conversations, smell the spices in the bazaar, smell the food cooking, touch the fabrics. I mean, it has to be a multi-sensory experience. And I'm also very much a believer in the power of community-based tourism. It is transformative for the communities who are receiving tourists, but also for the tourists themselves, because it's an experience which takes us away from our everyday lives, our everyday problems. And when we meet people and have those really genuine, authentic interactions, we learn more about ourselves, we learn about other people, we learn about the world, and it's really enriching. And often I find that when people come home from a trip, particularly to somewhere like Pakistan, it's the people which have really burned strongest in their memories. They've gone for the history or they've gone for the mountains, but it's the interaction with people which they remember most strongly long after the trip is finished.
And I think you touched a really interesting point in terms of it brings into context, brings in perspective, you know, of things, because I think, as you say, when we're living in the UK or in a developed country, you know, we laugh at first world problems. I don't know, but things like, you know, maybe we can't. I'm trying to think of first world problem, but you know, things like where the TV or the program's rescheduled or something silly like that. And then you go to countries like Pakistan, whatever, where you see they don't have much, but yet they've got this massive smile. You know, like most, you know, everyone is smiling. And I kind of think, you know, I laugh actually, because I think, you know, when you sit in the underground in London and everyone's there with a paper or not making eye contact, not smiling, and you're like, and you go to Pakistan and actually that's what they're doing. They're all trying to make eye contact. They're all smiling. And, you know, there's an expression that's, you know, chalega, which basically means, listen, chill, don't worry, you know, it will go with flow. And that, as you say, or certainly when I go to Pakistan and I come back and think, do you know what, actually I've got so much, you know, my issues are so small compared to some of the people in Pakistan, and yet they're all smiling.
Yeah, it puts it into perspective, and it reminds us that we are inherently very sociable beings. And at home often we cut ourselves off from our neighbours and the rest of the world, but actually we do need that time with other people, and it's the best feeling in the world to be laughing and joking with people. Yeah,
absolutely. So what I'm going to do is, before I go on to the next slide and start kind of showing you some of the headlines that, you know, the press are talking about and what they're saying about Pakistan, is I'm going to show a video. Actually, I want to also say, by the way, all the images and videos I'm using throughout are images. A few of the images are mine, but many of them are either Sophie's, my clients, or from Salam Pakistan, which is a tourism board. So I want to particularly do a shout out and thank Aftar Bhai and Sadia for giving me the videos and pictures from the tourism board that I'll for this. And I certainly can't take credit for the next video. So this video is a video I show all clients. That I show all clients when I'm at my travel shows. So whether it's destinations, luxury travel, I've now start calling it my magic video. And the reason I love this video so much, it's a video that Ava Zubek made, and she was actually commissioned by the government of Pakistan to make this video because it was for so the language is very much pitching at hoteliers. It was designed for an investment forum, and it was made back in 2018. And what I love about the video is that in 4.5 minutes, from a visual perspective, she really encapsulates all the different facets of from Pakistan. And I thought it would be helpful to play this video now rather than at the end, because when Sophie and I are talking about stuff, it will help visualize some of the stuff we're talking about. For me, it's also very special because, you know, she talks about, there's a lot of language she uses in it. Well, why can't Pakistan be like this? Why can't? And I've had a few people criticize and said, you shouldn't just show this video because it suggests that actually Pakistan's infrastructure is not there. And it's like, why can't it be? And I always say, well, it's when she says, why can't? So it's not that the infrastructure and the item, you know, the archaeology sites aren't there. But what she means by why can't is almost like, why aren't the press talking about these sites like they talk about the Grand Canyon, like they talk about Machu Picchu in Peru? So that was it. So so this video is very timely because and it's nice because it follows, it's from there to follow on to the headlines of what the papers are saying. It goes into, well, is on. Although, slight caveat, to be fair to the press, in 2020, we did have Condé Nast and New York Times actually put Pakistan as one of the top 20 destinations to visit. Unfortunately, the headlines came out in February of 2020, and in March, the world went to the lockdown. So unfortunately, Pakistan could never really benefit or leverage, from the great PR it was getting. We're getting that same great PR, which I will share with you. But I'm going to stop talking, put the video up for you to enjoy.
My name is Ava, and I am a travel vlogger. Over the last year, I traveled Pakistan far and wide, north to south and east to west. My videos and content about the country have garnered millions of views, but I'm not here to talk about myself today. Today, I'm here to talk about what I've seen of Pakistan and what I believe the future of Pakistan's tourism can be. See, most of my Pakistani friends start to chuckle when I tell them this, but it's really no joke. I believe that Pakistan can be the world's #1 tourism destination. It really can. Let me give you a few arguments as to why I think so. Starting with the mountains of Pakistan, one of the greatest assets that nature has bestowed. Current resorts of Malam Jaba and Naltar, why can't ski resorts dot of these mountains? That, looking at the beautiful landscapes of Skardu and Hunza and Sawat, why can't Nepal, with mountaineering and mountain trekking infrastructures that rival those of its neighboring countries, with 8 out of the world's 20 tallest mountains? This should be the epicenter of the world's trekking, adventure, and mountain tourism. And just look at the mountains. This is Hingol National Park in Balochistan. Now, why can't this become the next Grand Canyon? Trekking, hiking, and camping among these beautiful nature-made structures. And while we're in Balochistan, how can we forget about the beaches? The entire coast of the Arabian Sea, with the right attitude and vision, could become one of the world's prime beach destinations for all seasons. Imagine 5-star resorts, private islands, and beach shacks lining this beautiful coastline. Because, after all, and isn't it possible? Next up, culture and the arts. Both Sindh and the capital of culture, Lahore, have so much to offer. The craftsmanship and artistry and handicrafts that I've seen are unlike anywhere else in the world. This could be Pakistan's prime export. And imagine thousands, hundreds of thousands of tourists bringing bits of Pakistan with them back home to share with their communities. Religious tourism. Pakistan has such an incredible Islamic heritage. I know that the Sufi trail of Sindh can appeal not just to Muslim tourists, but to any tourists interested in history and culture. Pakistan also happens to be the birthplace of Sikhism and the travels of Guru Nanak. It's also home to some of the most important Hindu sites in the world, as well as Buddhist stupas and remains of a rich Buddhist heritage. History. Why don't more people around the world know that Pakistan is where the world's oldest civilization, the Indus Valley Civilization, was found? Why can't Makli Necropolis, Ranakot Fort, or Mohenjo-Daro become the next Machu Picchu or Angkor Wat? What exactly is preventing Pakistan from becoming the world's top destination for history buffs? And of course, let's not forget about the food. Pakistan has such a rich culture of food and cuisines, and the diversity from province to province is just astonishing. Take Lahore and Karachi. Where are the Michelin-starred restaurants? Why can't these places become some of the world's top culinary hubs for foodie tourism? Well, this is my Pakistan. It's going to take so much time, effort, dedication, and investment to bring this vision into reality. But I know that the gifts that Pakistan has been blessed with are endless. This is how I see the future of tourism in Pakistan. And I hope that you share my vision.
Have you seen this video for the first time, haven't you?
Yes, and it's absolutely beautiful and spot on. I mean, I agree with Eva very much. And over the last year in particular, I keep saying to people, Pakistan has got the greatest unrealized tourism potential of any destination I've visited. All of the raw materials, the resources are there. It's almost like the ingredients are waiting for a great meal, and what we need now is the recipe or the chef to bring it all together. That's the only bit we're waiting for. Everything is there. She picked up on the scenery, the mountains, the intangible cultural heritage, the history, the food. I mean, there's everything you could need for a fantastic, well-diversified destination is present.
And I think, I say, I'm obviously don't have video editing skills that Ava has. But when I first saw that video, I was like, wow, if I had to make a video and relay what that, it's almost like kind of, she's made that perfect video for me, because everything she's saying is kind of what I want to say to the world. And, that is basically kind of, Ava's done a great job for me, because she's actually, as I said, made me a video that I can say, right, if I had to bring it to life, this is what I would make. This is what I would say.
And it's really, really important that people like Ava have started putting Pakistan on the radar of the traditional press as well, because I think we're seeing more and more now is that the social media influencers are driving the agenda of where are going to be popular destinations, and the print media, the traditional media, are then catching up. But I'm really, really glad to see the beginning of this year, and you've got them on the slide here, there are so many international publications have finally realized that Pakistan is an extraordinary place and started promoting them to their readers for this year. And it's because of that increased visibility, combined with reforms on things like the visa policy, to make it much, much easier to visit Pakistan than ever before. So the security's improved, the visa is easier, and now it's getting the publicity. So it's a huge sort of energy behind the tourism growth.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I say to all clients that, look, I find whether that's Pakistan or Iran or, a lot of these other countries where we may well hear them come up in the headlines, and obviously, bad news sells, we only hear a one-dimensional perspective. But actually, if you want to get a true, real picture of Pakistan or other countries, I find that YouTube and social media, I find, is more accurate, because you've got the vloggers actually in the country, talking to the locals, meeting locals, a better perspective of the reality on the ground than actually the headlines or what you see, the snippets. And you're right, it's almost like you've got mainstream media now, which is catching up. It's almost like I feel, God, you guys are like 5 years behind. Ava was there in 2018, really talking about Pakistan, and 7 years on, finally.
But better late than never.
Absolutely.
We have to remember the traditional media reaches a very different audience. Usually an older, perhaps less tech savvy audience, but also the brands of people like the New York Times and CNN Travel have a huge amount of weight in influencing consumer behavior. And people feel confident when they see the Daily Telegraph or BBC Travel saying, go to Pakistan, it's fantastic. They think, oh, I hadn't thought of that before. But if BBC Travel says it's great, then yeah, I'll look into that.
Absolutely. And you're right. Mainstream media has a massive role to play in terms of instilling confidence. Obviously, these are like kind of, so these were features that appeared in January. And I think, some actually, Sophie, you drove, brought it to my attention. So you said we've got the Financial Times, CNN Travel, BBC. Now, the next few slides are actually kind of specifically, so you can see, so this is the New York Times Travel, and they had an article on 52 places to go to in 2025. and number 44 was Nungma Valley, Pakistan. So Nungma Valley is up in the north of Pakistan in Gilgit-Baltistan. Then before I go on, did you want to add anything, Sophie?
No, I'm quite happy if you can just talk us through the different articles briefly.
Sure. And then we had BBC Travel. So they again had the best 25 best places to visit in 2025. Pakistan, Gilgit-Baltistan region, came 20th. And as I go through, I always say I don't want to sound ungrateful, but common theme that's coming through. And then at the end of it, I'll give you a bit of a moan of the thing it's great, but what's frustrating me. So here, they talk about Pakistan is one of the world's most populated nations, yet it remains one of the greatest surprises for travelers. That may soon change as the country is hoping a slew of responsible tourism initiatives and new sustainable efforts. And I think, Sophie, you had a meeting, I think, was it with Green?
Yes, with Green Tourism.
Yeah, so tell us about that. How did that meeting go? Because they're pushing, as you say, about sustainable and making sure that the tourism in Pakistan is done in the right socially responsible manner.
Yeah, green tourism is driving a lot of the tourism investment and reform, but particularly looking at infrastructure and bureaucratic issues. So they were one of the ones pushing for the visa reform, for example. But they're also really identifying where people want to go, the sort of accommodation they need. And one of the best projects I've seen from them is the restoration of the old military barracks in Peshawar, which is now a heritage hotel. And that's a fantastic initiative for those people who like to stay in historic buildings, but have a high level of comfort and service as well.
In fact, my clients who are in Peshawar at the moment, as we speak, are staying at Peshawar Barracks. So you're absolutely right, because one of the things I find with all my clients is that big chain hotels, they're looking for character hotels, something that's, or it's got, as you say, like Peshawar Barracks has got the heritage. So I'm so glad, you've got Peshawar Barracks, you've got Ambience Hotel, which is a lovely boutique hotel chain in Horrocrux, Gunza. I think they've got one open in Islamabad, which again, when you go into their hotels, it's like going to an art gallery. It's amazing. And then you've got, the Serena chain, which is renowned for, its kind of sustainability credentials and being social. And they've basically converted a lot of the forts that you see in Hunza or
yes. And I stayed in the Serena hotels in both Hunza and in Gilgit when I was there on a previous trip.
Sorry, Sophie, we've lost you. We've lost your volume.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, yeah.
Excellent.
Brilliant. So what was the last bit? We lost the last line you said.
Yes, I was just saying when I was in Gilgit and Hunza, I stayed in the Serena hotels there and would certainly recommend them.
Yeah, brilliant. And then, we kind of talk about, so they talk about, obviously, highlight the North, that's in BBC Travel. We've then got Financial Times. Financial Times, again, talks about the north of Pakistan. And, the north of Pakistan is, as Ava was alluding to, has 8 of the highest peaks in the world. But I think apart from the majestic landscapes and all that, what Hunza is, and I don't know, Sophie, you remember, generally Pakistanis are very hospitable, very welcoming people. But like any country where when you start going to more remote villages, and you'll find that in the UK, suddenly, people are that much more friendlier and there's a bit more of a community base. And, up north, when you're going to the valleys, whether that's Hunza or Skardu, because they're smaller villages, the people are so welcoming. And one of the things is that they will not have much, but they will still insist on you coming and joining and having dinner with you. But one of the other interesting facts about the north of Pakistan is the fact that on average, most of the people there live to about 85 to 100. And that's mainly because of the healthy diet they have. They use a lot of apricots, a lot of dried mulberries, very little meat. Actually, their diet tends to be a lot more vegetarian and fruit-based than meat. Unlike the rest of Pakistan, but also generally, I think the quality of life. And what I found fascinating, Sophie, I don't know if you remember, I remember when I went in 2019 and we were going up towards Baltit Fort. And as you go up, you'll see there, and often those shops are manned by ladies. But the ladies, they're not young ladies. On average, they're about 80 plus. And not only are they still doing the embroidery, still doing the stitching work, their philosophy very much is about, you work until you die. There's no concept of retirement. And I think that's probably one of the secrets to the longevity of their life as well.
Yeah, certainly. People said to me it was about their diet. Obviously, they think there's an aspect of the genes as well, but also the clear mountain air. It's a very healthy environment to be living in. There's very little pollution, and people seem to stay very active into old age. It's not that they, as you say, retire at 60 or 65 and then want to just stay at home sitting and watching the TV. People are out and about. They're meeting their friends. They're meeting their family. They're walking. And climbing the quite sort of steep hills around the villages. So people are keeping physically very active and very healthy, which obviously means that they have a better quality of life into old age than if they had a very sedentary existence.
Yeah. And what I loved about the North is the collaborative approach they have. And what I mean by that, so Gilgit-Baltistan, generally, what many people don't know is 90% of the population there is educated. It's the most educated province in the whole of Pakistan. And the government not only promotes education of the community, but also on empowering women. And when I say empowering women, it's not just lip service. They actively provide grants to encourage women to have cafes, carpentry, and shops. And so and we do that as part of our tours, where we take you to a carpentry run by women, stuff that traditionally in any part of the world, we associate with men doing. But here you've got kind of women making the chairs, the tables, and then there's a carpet weaving, which again is run by women. But the reason I was bringing this point is that in the shops, what they've done is that they recognize, there's a certain life stage in a woman's life where she physically can't work because she's got childcare or she's having to look after her in-laws or the extended family. So what they've done is that older women who don't have dependents are running the shop. But to ensure that those women at home are still able to earn is that when you buy next time, or when you go up north, whether that's with us or anyone else, and you buy one of the handicraft bags, when you open it, you'll notice there's a little white slip in there. And that little white slip is actually letting the person or the lady who's selling it know who made this, so that when you're buying it, that money is actually going to that lady who's living in that house, who can't run the shop or be in childcare. And I just thought it was amazing. It was so entrepreneurial, and it was so forward thinking of actually how can we get rid of the barriers to ensure that just because you've got childcare commitments, you're not then, not able to earn.
Exactly. And it's a very short and very transparent supply chain. And it demonstrates that tourism is actually a far-reaching industry. And these associated industries like the handicraft sector are actually really buoyed up and supported by tourists as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And then finally, CNN Travel. So again, they had an article on where to go in 2025. And, Pakistan came up where it's home to 14 to 8,000. But certainly, it's got obviously K2 there, which is the second highest mountain in the world. So, that's kind of 4 headlines. And as I say, 4 headlines so far. The year's only just started. And I'm hoping, and, that we'll start to see more coverage in other press journals as well. But the running theme across all 4 was they're all talking about the north of Pakistan. Undeniably is stunning, is beautiful. But here's my moan and here's my bugbear, because it's almost like, that's great, but hello, we've got 4 other provinces or 5 other provinces you've just completely overlooked, not spoken about. And I think New York Times was the one where I had the greatest issue with, because they talk about the north and they then say, that the government of the US, whatever, allow you or consider this part of Pakistan to be safe for you to go. Which, as I said, I took personal offense to that, because actually then you're suggesting to your readership, or you're putting doubt in their mind to say, well, the rest of Pakistan is dangerous. And that's, I think, that's far from the truth. And Sophie, I think, as I said, I'm patriotic and I will say that because but Sophie, as a foreigner, because you, as I said, were there in November and you actually did the southern part of Pakistan this time.
Yeah, I think we mentioned earlier about the traditional media are playing catch up. And I think the reason that they focus so much on the north is that 10 years ago, actually, when there was a security problem elsewhere in Pakistan, people did go to the north because that was the place without any security restrictions, without any Foreign Office advisory. Now the security situation has changed and most of those restrictions have been lifted. So if you look at the Foreign Office, UK Foreign Office website now, actually the vast majority of Pakistan is absolutely fine. But because of this legacy of people feeling they could only go to the north, that's where the bulk of the tourism development has been. That's where most of the foreign tour operators are offering tours, and that's where the infrastructure developed first. So it is understandable that the media are recovering that, but they need to catch up and realize that actually the rest of Pakistan is predominantly open for business now as well. And there are some really stunning tourism sites that people will want to see.
Yeah, which nicely goes on to the next slide, which was all about, beyond the northern landscapes, which, look, I'm not going to take it away from them. It's stunning. And as you say, the infrastructure, that part of Pakistan is probably a bit more advanced in terms of the tourism infrastructure to the rest of Pakistan. But, as I said, the rest of Pakistan, what the South of Pakistan is really rich in is culture, architecture, archaeology. These are just 3 sites. So Mohenjo-Daro actually is one of the UNESCO sites. So, as I said, for those who enjoy culture, enjoy history, Pakistan is home to 6 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and there's about 8 or 10 at the moment on the list, of which Badshahi Mosque is one of them, and Sharif is another site which is in the running to become a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, I'm going to actually Sophie, speak to you about some of these.
I was really, really fortunate to see a number of these sites in the autumn, and the reason I wanted to see them is the first time I came to Pakistan 16, 17 years ago, I did only go to the north, and I felt that I'd missed out, because when I'd been a student, I'd seen the photographs, I'd read the archaeological reports, I'd learned about Mohenjo-Daro and about Harappa and the Indus Valley civilization. I'd learned about the shrines, and I wanted to see them for myself. And so I had the opportunity to go to a number of the places on your list here and to finally see them. And what I would say is, if you're thinking about going to Pakistan, do the north and south together. Allow yourself 2, 3, even 4 weeks. And then you've got the fantastic mountain scenery and the mountain cultures, but you've also got the extraordinary monuments and the historical sites, which are concentrated in the central and southern parts of Pakistan. Just to sort of pick some of my favorites from here, Mohenjo-Daro was a really emotional experience for me, because it is somewhere that I had studied decades ago. And it really is one of the birthplaces of civilization. We talk often about sort of ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, but the third civilization was IVC, the Indus Valley civilization. And Mohenjo-Daro is still there. You can walk the streets. You can see the granaries. You can see the bathhouses. You can see the harbour. And it's quite extraordinary to think that this thousands and thousands of year-old site is still there, and you have it to yourself. There is absolutely no way that if you go to Giza and the Valley of the Kings in Egypt, that you will have a site with anything less than 1,000 other people around you. But in Mohenjo-Daro in October, I think there were maybe 10 tourists in total across a site which goes on for miles. I mean, as far as the eye can see in any direction. In Thatta, again, I mean, Thatta, beautiful, beautiful monuments, in particularly the Shah Jahan Mosque. I spend a lot of time working in Central Asia and the sort of famous mosques and madrasas of the Silk Road there. But Thatta's mosque is comparable to any of those. It's got the beautiful tiles, the glazed tiles. It's got the beautifully painted interiors. And you realize the wealth of medieval and slightly later Pakistan, not only in terms of the financial wealth, but the artistic skills which the craftsmen invested in creating monuments which have lasted for centuries. Also picking on your list, the monuments within Lahore. So Lahore Fort is dramatic and has recently been renovated by the Aga Khan agencies, who are also working on the Wazir Khan Mosque, which is very close by. You've got the Badshahi Mosque, which I think is still one of the most beautiful and elegant mosques in Pakistan. The Shalimar Gardens, the tomb of Emperor Jahangir. So there are so many different monuments within that city and its envelope. I could easily spend a week just in Lahore seeing these extraordinary sights. And if you've been, I imagine a number of you will have been to Delhi and will have been to Agra and seen the monuments there. Pakistan's Mughal monuments are as good, if not better, than the ones in India, but receive a fraction of the number of the visitors.
It's really interesting you say that. There's 2 points you mentioned. One of them was, I think you said, when you go to Mohenjo-daro or when you were at Tata, there's only about 10 of you or 10 other tourists. And I'm an amateur photographer, so I love my photography when I go on a holiday. And I always say this with a smile to clients. I said, look, if you love your photography, what you are absolutely going to love is that when you go to these sites, you're going to get amazing pictures, and you won't have to do any editing of trying to get rid of those annoying people that come in the shot to ruin the shot, because you will probably be the only one there. So from a photographer's perspective, it's brilliant, because you can enjoy the site in its totality in your pictures. And then the other point you talked about, is Lahore. I mean, obviously, although I'm from Peshawar, I love Peshawar, but I think if I were to say the next city I like would be Lahore. And I say to all my clients, if you need, as you say, 5 or 7 days to really enjoy Lahore. And, so when I have some clients who've got 10 or 12 days and they're trying to squeeze in like a day and a half in Lahore, I always say, look, you're just not almost save that for another trip, because you're not doing it justice, because it's almost, you're going to spend, you're barely going to get to see anything. And you're probably going to come away dissatisfied, thinking a bit like you've touched it, but that's it. And
exactly. I mean, if you think about going to Paris or London, you wouldn't try and do it in 24 hours.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's going to be one thing that you and I are going to disagree on slightly. So, you kind of touched on it, said, well, if clients are going to go, maybe allow 2-3 weeks to try and do all of Pakistan. And I actually say to all my clients, I said, a bit like India, I kind of always say, look, and in fact, it goes nicely a bit to the, actually, I'm going to jump over. I'm going to go to the slide 14 first. So I always say is that it's a bit like India. You can't do India in one trip. The reality now, Pakistan isn't as big as India. It's smaller. But I said, at a minimum, you need 2 trips. So you almost need one trip which is devoted to the north of Pakistan, so that you can really enjoy it. And then one trip which is for the south of Pakistan, which is, as I said, a lot more culture and a lot more urban. And
I agree with that. It means that you can make the most of the seasonality as well, because you're going to want to go to the northern parts of Pakistan, to the mountains in the summertime. Maybe late spring, maybe early autumn, but predominantly it's a summer destination. Whereas the temperatures in the southern part of Pakistan are going to be very, very hot in June, July, August. So you're going to be better going to southern Pakistan in the autumn and winter.
Yeah, which is basically, when people say to me, oh, when's the best time to go to Pakistan? And I've said, well, it kind of depends on what you want to do. As you say, if it's the north of Pakistan, really the only times that I would recommend and that we tend to do is kind of from May or end of April through to kind of middle of October. And as you say, the south, now I always say south, in theory, you can do it all year round. However, the more safe, and like from a health and safety perspective, is probably from October through to March. And that's, as you say, it's because when you start going down towards Sindh, so Multan onwards, that part of Pakistan is hot all year round. And if you were to do that in the summer months, you're talking about temperatures mid to high 40s. And as you saw in Ava's video, and as we talk, we have got a slideshow of images that we'll be playing, so you can kind of bring to life some of the places we're talking about. But a lot of like Mohenjo-daro, Tata, these are archaeology sites where they are literally in the middle of nowhere. There's no shade, there's nothing. So you can imagine going there in July, August, when temperatures are, I mean, I said, Sophie, you can probably answer that better, because as I said, you were there, but you went in October or November, and how hot was it then?
It was still hot. We still needed sun hats and sunglasses, but it wasn't unbearable. And also, quite often you'll go out sightseeing early in the morning. Then you'll go and have a leisurely lunch somewhere where there's some air conditioning or a fan. And then you'll go out again later in the afternoon. So it's just a case of being sensible. If it is a hot, sunny day, you make sure you avoid the hottest part of the day, and you keep drinking lots of water.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, the north kind of, as I said, although we have end of April to middle of October, I always recommend actually probably June is the best time to do it. And the reason being, so I've got a couple of clients I'm working with at the moment who are looking to go because the way the holidays are, they can only go in April. But there are things like the Jil Sefrumlut, which is in Naran. So Jil Sefrumlut is a stunning lake, which is kind of, you go up this really muddy road and you kind of do think as you're going up this, you know, like there's nothing around you, like what the hell am I doing? But then suddenly as the Jeep turns around the corner, it opens up to this stunning lake surrounded by these mountain peaks. Now the story behind Jil Sefrumlut is that there's been many divers that have gone from all around the world to dive in the lake to try and understand the depth of it, but to date no one's been able to find the depth. Now unfortunately that actually is only accessible between June and October, or beginning of October. If you were to go up north and you wanted to go in May, that's one of the key places you wouldn't be able to see. The other one that's you know, a lot of the press are talking about is Desai National Park. It's known for its kind of forage and also kind of some of the wildlife there, but that only opens up in June and then closes kind of end of September. So they're just kind of key things to note, that although in theory you can do it from mid of April to mid of October, but actually if you wanted the optimum tour where you want to see all the places that everyone's talking about, June or kind of end of August is probably the better time to do it. I will say one of the times, so I'm not saying I won't do it, but is from the middle of July to the middle of August, and end of June to the middle of August. And that's mainly because what you'll find is that that's when you've got a lot of the locals on their summer holidays, and so that obviously they go up north to escape the heat. And I'm saying there's nothing, you know, I've got nothing against the locals, but because these are valleys, you know, what you find, it gets very congested and you're stuck in traffic jams. So from that perspective, a trip can always go in time because of the traffic, and it's just not as pleasurable. So they're kind of sometimes, you know, even if you were to do it independently, just a tip to avoid those times. So I'm going to go kind of just back, so because I jumped a slide. So, you know, when I go on to categorize, you know, so well, what can we do in Pakistan? I always say, look, there are 4 types of holidays you can do. You can do what I call, and I say the word adventure loosely, because the minute I say adventure, people think of adrenaline junkie, you know, hardcore trekking and, you know, rafting. Yes, all of that does exist. And yeah, actually, we do have the infrastructure where you can also do off-piste skiing there as well. But actually, when I say adventure, I'm referring to more the northern areas, and it's just a heading I've given. When you want to do the north of Pakistan, you know, you don't have to be a trekker, you know, because I've had the question, people say, oh, we'd love to see the north of Pakistan, but we don't really trek or we can't hike. You know, you can do it like my family and I did it in 2019, where you got jeeps.
we seem to have lost Sadia, but hopefully she'll be able to reconnect shortly.
Hi everyone, sorry about that. Sophie, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're back in the room.
Yeah, kind of lost power, so I'm not sure what happened. I'm just adding the deck now, hopefully. Okay. So. Find them. Okay. Hi everyone, so sorry. Okay, you all still here? I seem to have lost power, but I'm back now. Okay, so yeah, so we're talking about the Cultural and Heritage Tour, and then we've got what Sophie was suggesting, the hybrid. So, I understand that everyone has the luxury of, whether that's finances or time, and Pakistan may be a destination where you're only ever going to visit once. So for those situations, we do have a hybrid where you can do a bit of the north and you can do a bit of the culture and kind of mix and match. And then finally, recreational. Now, Sophie, do you follow cricket?
I don't, sadly, but I know lots of people do, and it's a very good reason to go to Pakistan to watch a live match.
Well, absolutely. So the ICC Championship actually started today, and it's going on for 2.5 weeks. So when I say recreational, the recreation tours are very much your bespoke, tailor-made tours. And they are, kind of based on around, whether that's cricket. So as I said, at the moment, we've got the ICC Championships. I think South Africa are doing a test series, I think next year in in Pakistan. And then what people don't know, and I always say to people that, so sorry, I just got distracted with the chats. So yeah, one of the things that people don't know is the golf courses. So, if you're a golfer and you're looking for a kind of an interesting or a different destination, then I cannot kind of tell you how amazing the golf courses in Pakistan are. And I find it puzzling, people give me this weird look, say, they play golf in Pakistan. And I'm like, look, every country has its elite. Pakistan is no different. Pakistan also has an elite, and the elite people that do play, golf. Not that I'm saying I'm elitist or I'm elite, but, my father and my whole family play golf. They're huge golfers. And my dad, in fact, has, I think, taken part in many tournaments all around Pakistan. And because he obviously knows that I promote tourism and, I'm promoting, trying to get golfing holidays in Pakistan, thing. So he's always sharing pictures. I say, oh, look, this is a really good golf course. You can add this to your itinerary. But the most beautiful ones are, there's one in Multan, which is actually built by an American golfer. And it's built at an international level. I think it's called Romana Golf Course. It was only opened last year. And then you've got kind of Raya Golf Club in Lahore, and then you've got one in Karachi. So as I said, I'm not going to go too much because I'm conscious that not everyone in the audience is interested in golf, but there's things like that where we're specialists in doing tailored and kind of bespoke itineraries. So what I kind of want to know now, I'm going to actually see if I can find the video. And so I've kind of covered the slides and I've talked about briefly, the different aspects of Pakistan. But the rest of kind of the webinar, I really want to focus on actually, Sophie, you were talking and kind of let's talk about, so you were in Pakistan. I know we've been kind of jumping into it. And some of these pictures, by the way, that I'm using are Sophie's pictures. And there's some of her. So tell me about the highs. What was the bit that you enjoyed most when you were in Pakistan?
Certainly the ability to meet local people. And I know you had a picture earlier on of the Bibi Jawindi complex in Sharif. And one of the lovely things there was meeting people, just local teenagers, local kids who were hanging out with their friends, playing football, playing cricket, and being able to chat to them as we looked around the monument. And it's a reminder that these, with a few exceptions, are not places which are frozen in time. They are still very much community spaces within their respective villages. The shrines and the mausolea still attract people who are pilgrims, who are coming to pray, to hear sermons, to perform music. But there are also places where people come for a picnic and to catch up with their friends and have a chat. And it's that fact that the heritage is still living, which really is fascinating to see. It's not like going to Stonehenge, where you realise that the people have been pushed out years and years ago. Here, the people are very much a part of the monuments and the space as well. So I think that was a really, really beautiful thing. One other thing that I was really, really impressed at many of the monuments that I visited is the restoration work that's going on. Incredibly sensitive work being done with the traditional materials and the traditional skills. And this is really important because it's not only preserving the physical buildings for future generations, but also making sure that the artisans who know how to do the wood carving, who know how to do the tile making, who know how to do the gilding, have got work. And it's preserving their skills for the future and for making sure that they've got livelihoods as well. So in parallel to the physical buildings, we're preserving the intangible cultural heritage of Pakistan. And that, for me, is really, really important, that those skills aren't lost and that the work of the artisans are valued.
One of the questions that I get asked by people all the time, and obviously I can't compare because I haven't been to India, is Delhi belly. And I've heard Delhi belly is a very big thing in India. Now that could be, in Pakistan, obviously I generally don't get food poisoning. Now that could be maybe because I'm acclimatized to the country or I've lived there. How did you get on with food in Pakistan?
I love the food. I thought it was absolutely delicious. And one of the things I was really interested in was to see how the cuisine changed, going from Sindh to Punjab and then to the north as well. The cuisine is quite different, the ingredients and the techniques for cooking food. So if you're a foodie, you're going to have an absolute riot of a time. I had a fantastic night out in Peshawar, trying all of the different street foods and delicious food in Lahore as well. I think just generally when you're traveling, you have to take basic precautions, because even if you've got the best food in the world, there are going to be some unfamiliar ingredients, unfamiliar bacteria, and so sometimes people get sick. The most important thing is making sure that you're not drinking the tap water. I always have a filter bottle with me, so I don't have to be using single-use plastics. So that means I can fill up my filter bottle from any tap or any source, and I can drink it reliably. Again, making sure that if you've got fruit, that you either wash it or you peel it, and just generally focusing on really fresh food that's cooked in front of you. I never have a problem with street food because it's cooked right there and when. It's not left sitting around. It's not like a hotel hotel buffets are notorious if the salad's been sat out for 3 hours. But if the food is hot, if the food is freshly prepared, great, go for it.
So tell me, because you've touched on it. So let's go back to your time in Peshawar. Now you did something quite special in Peshawar, didn't you? Specifically about the food. Do you want to let everyone know kind of what you had done?
So Sadia kindly arranged for me to do a food experience, a cookery experience with a local family, with a chef called Anila. And it was just the most amazing evening, going to her home, preparing the ingredients together, and then not only have the sort of the cooking class, but actually being able to sit with the family and discuss with them about the city, about culture, about politics, about all of the kind of things that you discuss at home with your friends. And often if you're a tourist and you're staying in hotels, you don't get to have those long and in-depth discussions. So being part of a family for an evening really was one of the highlights of my trip.
Oh, fantastic. And generally, like, how did you, because obviously, as I said, I get a real thing, you know, Peshawar always gets a bad reputation. Because I know when you're in Peshawar, you were like, although you had obviously the driver and guide with you, but generally you were like a solo traveler at that part of your trip. How did you find that?
I really enjoyed Peshawar. I think it's there's so many fascinating places in Pakistan, but Peshawar has got a longer and more varied history than almost anywhere else. Not only the monuments, but the museum. I mean, I think the Peshawar Museum is probably the best museum in Pakistan, as far as I'm concerned. It's got an extraordinary collection of Gandharan Buddhist art, which people might be quite surprised to find in the city. But I mean, I loved my time in Peshawar, and everybody I met was so friendly. They were, I think, in many cases, quite surprised to see a tourist. But that meant that people went out of their way to say hi. They wanted to chat, find out what I was doing. Did I need any help? Would I like a cup of tea? That really genuine, warm hospitality. And it's a beautiful, beautiful city. And I would highly recommend to anybody including it in their Pakistan itinerary.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, as you know, it's interesting because, you know, with all my clients and Sophie included, whenever you go to Pakistan, I always create a WhatsApp group. And normally it tends to be like 3 weeks before you're traveling. And part of that reason is for you to exchange your hellos and highs with your driver and guide that you'll be in Pakistan. But it's also, I suppose, partly to reassure you, you know, that I haven't taken your money and disappeared off the radar. Because I recognize, although I get to meet many of my clients via video calls, but ultimately I'm an online company. So it's, again, giving the reassurance. The beauty of that is that the reason I bring that up is that I get to see a lot of the pictures that they're taking and the messages. So as I said, I've got a group currently, there's about 6 of them. They're doing the cultural tour in Pakistan, and actually they're in Peshawar right now. And they actually went and visited my family yesterday, kind of spoke to my cousin. I'm always aggressive. You can so for me, I wanted to go in and see and show your father-in-laws was allow their daughter-in-laws to work. So anyway, so they were like sharing pictures with me, and the idea was originally that they would just have dessert and green tea, but they actually ended up, I think, having a meal, and rather than spend an hour there, I think they spent about 3 hours there. In fact, they watched the wedding video of my cousins, and they kind of got a tour of the house and everything. But it was lovely, and I've got a quote that I've taken of one of the best. We felt like royalty did 5 days we've had on the trip so far. Day 5 of their trip. It's that way. Showing easy to do. Kind of strong of the whole trip, but it makes such a difference in terms of showing you different perspective of the community.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of the most important things for Pakistan, because the country doesn't have the best reputation, and we've talked about a few of the reasons why that is. So it's really, really important to meet local people and chat with them and find out what their experience is. Because the reality on the ground for most people is very, very different from the international public perception of the country. Pakistan is moving forward. There's all sorts of fascinating things happening. The security is much, much improved. There's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, particularly in the tourism sector. and people have got big plans, exciting plans, and are really making them happen.
Absolutely. So I've actually because I've got lots of images, but I've paused on this image specifically because, Sophie, did you go to the Varga border when you were in So tell me how you felt. So I always say, when I'm trying to explain to my customers, I kind of think, if you think about changing the guards in Buckingham Palace, it's like that, but it's on a, like on speed, because it's like, it's got the whole theatre, the whole dramatics around it. But what I loved about it when I went there was, although you've got India and Pakistan next to each other, was the harmonious, positive energy on both sides.
Definitely. It's like being in a football stadium, because both sides of the border, the crowds are cheering, they've got their snacks, they've got their flags, they've got face paint, and everybody's cheering for their side. But the army staff I can't remember whether it's border force or which group it is, but on both sides, on the Indian side and on the Pakistani side, have coordinated and choreographed their performances so precisely, that whether they are doing their walks, their saluting, their dancing, their flag lowering, all of it is really precise. And they practice together. This is one thing that I hadn't realized. Previously, I had seen it from the Indian side. And then in November, I saw it from the Pakistan side. But yeah, I was told that the troops on both sides practice together. So it's a really good example of how India and Pakistan can get along and can work together.
In fact, that brings me, I kind of always get emotional because, I kind of, I have this idealistic view that, we can all live peacefully together. There's plenty of room for everyone. We don't have to get all territorial about things. But again, I'm obviously come from a cricket family, and there's a really good Netflix series on which is called The Greatest Rivalry, India versus Pakistan. I would highly recommend. It's only about 3 episodes for all of you to watch that, even if you don't like cricket. Okay, because I think there's something, as you say, and they talk about this thing about when India and Pakistan play, often the Indians and Pakistanis, but the whole world wants to watch, because you can feel that, it's almost a completely different match. It goes beyond just a match. It becomes, political, but in a nice kind of way. But what I loved about that series was because it showed it in 2002, I think, where the situation between Pakistan and India wasn't great. And at the time, both leaders of the country said, okay, we've got to improve this. This can't go on. So they basically introduced a series of cricket matches to play between India and Pakistan. And they relaxed the border, and they used cricket as a tool to bring the countries together. And oh my God, between 2002 and 2008, it was amazing. In fact, as I watched it, I actually had tears coming to my eyes. And even as I talk about it, I get emotional, because it shows when the Indian fans came in Pakistan to watch the game. For them, it wasn't just a game, because obviously before partition, India, Pakistan was one. So a lot of these people coming from India said, oh, we've got family who used to live in Lahore, who used to that, so we can now see our ancestors or our grandparents' home. And it was the same when the Pakistanis went. And beyond the game, it showed the love between the two countries. I think for me, the most saddening thing was that it all ended in 2008 when the Mumbai attacks happened. And for me, it was a shame, because I felt that was an opportunity for the leader of India at the time, is rather than let the terrorists win, which he did, because at that point, everything stopped. All the matches, all the Indian actors or Pakistani actors were going cross-border for the film industry or the music completely stopped. And there was a big blanket ban for any Pakistani artists or matches. It was the terrorists. And as you say, that's why that series is really good. And as you say, that's why the Varga border is so get on. We have a very common, similar culture.
Absolutely. It's and both the Wagga and the cricket are a symbol of hope and what that relationship could be like in the future. Because, and I know I say this as an outsider, but Pakistan and India are effectively brother and sister. They come from the same origins, and they have far, far more in common than what divides them. And so when there are periods of tension and fighting, it's really, really difficult. But ultimately, I am optimistic that relationship can and will improve, because they are ultimately two children of the same parents.
Oh, no. Absolutely. You know, as you say, we have to be optimistic, and we have to hope that, you know, there will be a brighter future.
And
so,
I was just going to say, I saw a good sign of that when I was in Pakistan in November. It was in the run-up to an important Sikh festival, and Pakistan has recently made it much, much easier for Sikhs, not only from India, but also the Sikh diaspora community in places like Canada, to come on pilgrimage and other religious tours, to come to Pakistan, to see the religious sites, and to engage with their faith within Pakistan. And that for me is a really important step in opening Pakistan up to
it's interesting you brought that up. Can you hear me? I can find sounds going. Are you able to hear me, Sophie?
Yes, I can. You've come back.
Okay.
We might have lost you again.
Yeah, I think you see me now?
I can see you, yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So and I've got another group of 8 people going in November with me. But for them, what's lovely is that, you know, it's just about Sikh Yatra, you know, because many of them, as I said, have got memories or stories they've heard from the grandparents of the different villages and different places. So, you know, what we specialize is, because we don't do coach tours, you know, we do very much tailor-made bespoke, is that within the itineraries, we're taking them to some of the ancestral homes, or, you know, the villages that they kind of want to see. And to your point is, the government of Pakistan has made it so easy for me to do that with the Sikh community as well, which is brilliant.
It's one of many, many positive signs about the future for tourism in Pakistan.
Absolutely. So I'm just kind of quickly going through to see if we covered everything. I am going to say, obviously, I know Catherine, Sam, I don't know or Martin, if you're still there, if you can hear me. You know, if you, I've been watching some of the chats. You know, many of you think have been to Pakistan, and it's lovely to hear your positive comments about Pakistan. Did you have any questions for Sophie, or kind of any questions or anything you feel that we haven't covered?
I think one thing that I'd like to comment on is about the personal safety aspect, because often if you say you're going to a destination like Pakistan, people say, oh, is it safe? Particularly if you're going as a woman traveller, if you're going as a solo traveller. And I would say, honestly, I felt very, very safe as an individual whilst I was in Pakistan. One of the problems, unfortunately, in India and some other destinations as well is street harassment and sexual harassment of women. That's much, much less common in Pakistan. And so I felt very, very comfortable, even in sort of markets and crowded places where you might sometimes feel a bit nervous. But going out and about, whatever I wanted to do, daytime, evening, I did feel very, very comfortable. And I felt that the people around me, even though they were strangers, wanted me to be there and were looking out for me.
Sophie, we've lost your volume.
Sorry, I've stopped speaking.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, no, that's really good, because I think Martin's just put question, personal safety and any other risk. So I think Sophie's covered that really well. And as I said, you know, look, Pakistan, like many countries, is actually safe, but you've got to be sensible about it. Just like you would have to be sensible about the UK of where you go. You know, Pakistan is no different. But to say that Pakistan poses any more danger than maybe going to France or going to, I know, Spain, I think is a misrepresentation of the country. I don't think that's the case. And, you know, I get asked the question, like, can I do Pakistan by myself? Is if you're just going to cities, I mean, in theory, you know, because I've seen it on YouTube vloggers and, you know, these men and women vloggers doing Pakistan by themselves, you know, absolutely you can. I think some of the tours where there's like Mohenjo-daro long distances, that's difficult, not because of safety, but that's just because the infrastructure to get there is not there. And, you know, there's not, if you don't have a guide, then you won't necessarily know what you're looking at unless you're a historian and you've done your own research.
And
but I think
that's a really important point to consider is, yes, you can do Pakistan independently, but if you do, you will probably miss out on quite a lot. And the advantage of traveling with a company like Experience Pakistan is you have help on the ground to help you get to the most interesting places. You have local guides, you have local support, not only with the logistics, but also explaining to you what it is you're looking at. And it's very companionable. And if there are places that you might not understand or might feel a little bit nervous, there will be somebody else there who is a local, who knows what's going on, and is able to support you through that.
And then Sophie, the other question is directed to you. So the first question I've got is from Sam. He's saying, is Khyber Pass safe to drive through? I'm going to say yes in inverted commas. And the reason I'm saying yes in inverted commas is that I haven't done it yet, but when I had a lot of people coming up to me and saying, we'd like to go to Afghanistan, can you do this? So that's something that I am looking at. I said, look, what's gone?
So I used to travel before the return of the Taliban. I used to travel to Afghanistan quite a lot. There was a big security problem then, and going over the Khyber was not advised. However, since the return of the Taliban, the level of security on the ground in Afghanistan has improved significantly. There are a variety of reasons for this, one of them being that the Taliban used to be the terrorists and are now in power and therefore are not blowing up their own country. And so there are a number of tour operators who have restarted tours to Afghanistan and are starting those tours in Pakistan, because one of the easiest ways to get into Afghanistan, one of the safest ways, is to go over the Khyber Pass and to travel that way. If you are planning on doing a twin-centre tour of Pakistan and Afghanistan, I would highly recommend doing it with a tour operator, either a local company or an international one, because there is a lot of additional bureaucracy that is required for the border and for travelling around within Afghanistan that you would need support with.
Absolutely.
If you don't speak the local.
And that's what I was just going on to say, that basically our team, so within domestic in Pakistan, we have seen an increase of locals from Pakistan across the Khyber Pass into Afghanistan. So that started. Hence why, as I said, at the moment, I'm just looking into it, just your safety is paramount that we can do that. So yes, it is. But as Sophie said, I would never recommend to do it independently. It's at the moment, go with a reliable company. And as I said, watch your space. We are looking at it. The companies that maybe were doing it before are now resuming. The question I've got for you, Sophie, is from Martin. What was your number one favourite thing or place during your whole visit?
Oh, I mean, I have a real affection for Lahore, possibly because it was the first place I went to ever in Pakistan 15, 16 years ago. And going back, seeing how much the city is changing, but generally in a positive way. So the concentration of monuments there and the food and the culture I absolutely adored. But also going to some of the archaeological sites, to Mohenjo-Daro, to Harappa, to Makli, where the mausoleums are, and just feeling that sense of history and the ghosts of the past. And particularly because they are so quiet, because there are so few people there, you can sort of half close your eyes and imagine that you're transported back 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years in time. And still walking those streets, going into buildings. So that almost sense of being a time traveller was very, very, it's left a strong impression on me.
Amazing. Sorry. So I hope, Martin, that's answered your question. If you want to expand or want Sophie to expand, please let me know. Got a question from Stephen. What more can be done to get major? So I think So what more can be done to get major adventure brands to include Pakistan, following Experience Pakistan and Wild Frontiers lead?
So the first thing needs to be a push from the Pakistan side, both from the DMCs, the local tour operators, and from the tourism board, to develop and promote products and a variety of products for a variety of different tourists. We talked earlier about how the adventure products in the north have got some sort of presence and visibility, but the rest of Pakistan and the other kinds of tourism products are very little known. So a lot needs to be done to develop and market those products so that they get attention. The other thing is actually on the security. Because the security is improved, the government needs to do a really big push to make sure that message gets out there, not only to individual tourists, but also to the tour operators, who are inevitably risk averse because their reputation is on the line if anything happens to their tourists. So making sure that people know very clearly what the reality is of traveling on the ground in Pakistan. If there are areas which aren't safe, that's fine. People can be told that. But the areas which are safe, making sure that the messaging is out there. There are still some places, his sort of legacy restrictions with curfews or requirements for an escort. If those are no longer needed, the government needs to get rid of them, because otherwise people are worried, oh, why do I need an escort? Oh, why can't I go out at night? And they assume that there's a problem, when actually these are often regulations which were introduced a decade ago when there was a problem, and are no longer necessary. So making sure that the regulation is updated as well will certainly help. The last thing I would say is in terms of the sort of the networking and links. Pakistan needs to be much more consistent in its presence at international events like ITB, World Travel Market, Adventure Travel Networking, all of these specialist events, so that people who are in the travel trade become much more familiar with Pakistan and its product offering, so that they can make business relationships and that they can come on fam tours, that they can get to see firsthand what Pakistan has to offer, and will become more confident in selling it to their clients.
Yeah, and I think just adding to that, Sophie, just speaking as a Pakistani and obviously working with them, I think, Stephen, the biggest challenge we have is that often, because, as you know, the political situation in our country is that no government really sees a full term. And actually for tourism, you need consistency, you need a long-term strategy. And unfortunately, what you find is that you don't have that. There's a lot of short-term strategies. And when you've got, so by way of example, I've been hearing since 2018 that they're going to be launching this big marketing campaign for, to promote and push tourism for Pakistan. I've yet to see that. I think the closest thing that's coming, to be fair, Aftab and Sadia, they've got Salam Pakistan. So they have come up with a series of kind of promotional videos that we can use and material. But I think until they don't have a long-term strategy, which is 30 years down the line with key goals, and that, governments that are coming in continue to that, rather than everyone coming in and wanting to then redo it, it's going to be challenging. And that's where I think, I have a lot of respect for Wild Frontiers, because, they've been doing it, since I think 1998 or 1997, I think, pushing Pakistan. And, even when things go down, they continue to do it. But I think that's where people like myself, or, I would say to other people, people who want to give voice to these developing countries, they have to be passion projects. And it's for individuals and private entities. Like, the government of Pakistan will never have the, unfortunately, to be able to compete with countries like India or Sri Lanka, who throw lots of money towards tourism. Because, as I said, I've been doing this for 7 years, and I just don't see that mindset changing anytime too soon, unfortunately, which is very cynical of me. But I think that it is very much down to independent companies like us championing Pakistan.
I would give a word of hope.
Rather than relying on the government to do it.
I would give a word of hope that governments can change their focus very quickly. And Uzbekistan is a good example of this, because before 2018, there was almost no tourism development or promotion in Uzbekistan. But then a new president came to power. He said it was a priority, and the country has rapidly grown since 2017, 2018. And Pakistan could be the same. If there is a government who comes to power and says tourism is a priority, all of the pieces of the jigsaw are there, all of the ingredients are in place. It just needs that push from the centre to give a boost to the private sector, who all doing brilliant work in Pakistan.
And Sophie, you're right. I mean, as you said, we got that cash injection in the form of Imran Khan, and I think that's where, you know, things actually did to government. You know, one of the key things, because what I have a lot of respect for Imran Khan, that he's a strategic thinker. He gets the benefits of tourism, that has a ripple effect, and because he put tourism so high up on the agenda, that's when you saw a real increase in the fantastic boutique hotels that have been built, but also in all of these vloggers coming to Pakistan and pushing Pakistan. And you're right. Maybe I'm being too cynical, because actually one of the, you know, some of the key things that have changed is the visa process. You know, as you say, the visa process, God, it is so easy to do. And, you know, it's something I often now, with clients who aren't so tech savvy, help them do it. So I've seen it firsthand. It literally takes you 20 minutes or half an hour, no more than that. You don't need a letter of invitation. You don't need all of that paperwork that you used to do. So yeah, maybe I stand corrected. Maybe I'm being too cynical and I need to be a bit more optimistic. Just I'm conscious of time, because we're going up to like an hour and 27 minutes. But Catherine has got a question. She was asking me about Swat. So to be honest, when we take our clients to Swat, no, you don't need a police escort. Now, but I will mention the point, and I think Sophie, you know, mentioned it about, you know, policies. So the way it works in Pakistan, that every province has its own policy on security and how they would do things. And the reason I bring this up, so for Swat, generally, no, you don't need a police escort. However, when you enter the province of Sindh, and Sophie, you may have seen this in your trip, you do have police escorts. And that's not something that we as a company, you know, have any say in the matter. And that's also the reason I mention this, because to be fair, my fault. I wasn't aware, and I had clients who went 2 years ago, and they said, sorry, we're having a great time, but when we entered like a police car behind us with police forces, it was fine, but obviously we were just a bit taken aback because we weren't expecting it. And the reason they do that, I think, because we're starting to see a little bit of tourism, the last thing we want as a country is a PR disaster. So like Karachi or Sindh is not safe, but I think the government of Sindh, or the provinces, have made it a rule that just to cover all bases, they ensure you have police escort. They don't really get in the way of your holiday. You know, our clients got very friendly with the policemen. They were taking pictures with them. You know, they're all very friendly. They're not intimidating. But there, as I said, every province has its own rule, and I think Balochistan is the same. Where if you were to go to Balochistan, and generally there's part of Balochistan that I don't cover for security reasons, but like the Hingol National Park, certainly absolutely stunning. You can go there safely, but you would have a police escort. I'm just going through to see. So yeah, so Sam, yeah, you've just said that you went to Swat and you didn't need any security. Sorry, Sophie, I'll let you talk. I'm just going through the chats to see I'm not missing out on any questions.
I think the final message that I'd like to say to people is now is a fantastic time to visit Pakistan. And it's not because the New York Times says you should go in 2025. It's very practical reasons, that the security is in a good position. The infrastructure is developing and has reached the point now, particularly the road infrastructure is pretty good, and there are some good places to stay. The renovation of the monuments is ongoing. So all of the products are almost ready for a wide audience, but that audience hasn't yet come. So you can have the benefits of seeing Pakistan in its new and improved state, but without having to share it with busloads of other tourists. I think it's generally a really exciting time to be in the country. I was so glad to be there in November, and I'm already planning a return trip.
Amazing. That's fantastic. And just, one last thing, we were talking about, or I think, Stephen, you mentioned a question about adventure tourism or development. There are exciting projects happening. For example, we have got, so I think on the 30th of April, finally the project's being initiated, that they're going to have a train from Islamabad to Murray, and it's a glass train, which will be the first of its kind. I think they've got one in the Rocky Mountains. So it means from Islamabad to Murray if you go by, it might be about 35 or 40 minutes. But, going up, you've got lush green pine trees, beautiful views. So I can only imagine, I know it's like 5 or 6 years down the line, but it's just by way of example to show you that some of the projects that are being discussed and are in the pipeline that you can look forward to, and the direction that the country's going in from a tourism perspective.
That sounds brilliant. I want to be on that train.
So do I. So I originally, and I had a bit of a, on this Instagram post, it said launching on the 30th of April. And I thought, oh, fantastic. I've got clients going in May and I'm going in June. So I'm going to go on that train. Of course, they did a follow-up post, I think, on Facebook or something where they had more copy. And when you read the copy, approval to initiate the project, and now we're going to try and find investors to fund it so that we can start building it. So I was like, well, can you change that copy then to say initiating? Because the way you give, it was almost like it was launching and ready to go.
Still, it's something for us all to look forward to in a few years' time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sophie, for your time. I think, we've been chatting. I've been a bit slow updating the pictures in the background, so we haven't got through all the slideshow of all the images. But I've got this shot here, which I think there's a bit of a lag between what I'm seeing and what the audience are seeing. But I'm just going to say that this picture here is actually of Food Street in Peshawar. And the reason I'm specifically focused on this, so I have a big bugbear, and this is a running joke, me and my husband. So when I got married, and he said, oh, can you make karai gosh? So I'm from Peshawar, but he's from Karachi. So I made karai gosh as I know it, where it's a very simple dish. All you put is tomatoes, green chilies, a bit of salt and pepper, and that's pretty much it. And I made it, and he's like, what is this? This just looks so uncooked and raw. And of course, I hadn't realized, because he was used to having karai gosh, which is served in restaurants here, or the way they make it in Karachi, which is like full of spices and full of things. And I'm like, you guys just insult the dish and ruin it, because it's nothing like this. This is how it is. And so for all my clients, I said, look, you must, when they go to Peshawar, I said, you must go to Namak Mandi. And I think someone has mentioned it in the chat. And you must try an authentic Peshawar karai gosh, because this is actually how it's supposed to taste. None of the stuff you eat in the restaurants is actually, and obviously the cuisine in Peshawar is quite influenced by the Afghani community because of its proximity in Peshawar, is you can now actually get a proper karai gosh here in the UK. In fact, I would recommend in Southall to go to Vatan, which is a restaurant opened by a Peshawari. So the flavors there are very authentic, and would highly recommend you to go there.
And the food I had in Peshawar was the best on the trip. I mean, fantastic food there. So I wish you all not only bon voyage, but also bon appetit.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sophie, for your time. And one last thing I just want to say, don't want to burst your bubble, but Peshawari naan doesn't exist. I get asked that question a lot. That people say, oh, can we have Peshawari naan in Peshawar? Because it's not, it doesn't exist in my city. It's very much a UK created dish. It's not a Pakistani dish at all. Thank you so much, everyone, for your engagement, for your time, for your patience. I'm just doing one last scroll to see I haven't missed anything. And if I have, my sincere apologies. I will catch up with the questions afterwards. Okay, I can see everyone's. Okay, well, thank you so much for your comments. I'm going to end this video by playing another video for you to all enjoy. But on that note, thank you, Sophie, for your time. Thank you for your kind comments about Pakistan and the continued work and effort you do with Pakistan Tourism Board. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care, everyone. Have a lovely evening. And thank you, as I said, to the audience who've taken the time out this evening. Have a lovely evening, all. Okay. Bye-bye.